Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to international webinar with the topic 25 years of India's independence, Journey of Jammu and Kashmir toward prosperity. Today is Friday, 4th of February 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, both speaker from India and Indonesia has already listened with us. The seminar is organized by Center for Southeast Asian Studies Indonesia, CSEAS, and also it is live streaming on CSEAS Indonesia YouTube channel. Please allow me to introduce. My name is Asep Setiawan. I am a research fellow of Center for Southeast Asian Studies Indonesia and academic staff, graduate of political science, University of Muhammadiyah, Jakarta. We have a 5 speaker already here. Mr. Utpal Kaul, welcome to the webinar. Mr. Utpal Kaul will be the first speaker, and then the second speaker is Lieutenant General Retired Atta Hasnain. Welcome, Mr. Atta Hasnain. And the third speaker is Mr. Feramala Anjaya, speaking from Jakarta. And the fourth speaker is Lieutenant General Vinod, Senior Military Officer. Welcome, Vinod Bhatia, Mr. Vinod Bhatia. And the last speaker, of course, is the young scholar, Anton Ali Abbas from Indonesia. Their distinguished speaker and distinguished guests from around prominent embassy and institution both in India and Indonesia. As the objective of the seminar is, among others, discuss the remarkable achievement of India the last 25 years, expose the true intention behind Kashmir Solidarity Day and its supports to terror groups, and also analyzes the progress made by Jammu and Kashmir after joining India 1947, and also the aims of webinar is to present true facts about Jammu and Kashmir and its future. Please, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Mr. Utpal Kaul. He is the international coordinator of the Global Kashmir Pandit Diaspora, and Mr. Utpal Kaul is a community activist and leader and spokesperson of KV community for more than 4 decades. As a young scholar of Kashmir University, he has president of Students' Union. And Mr. Utpal Kaul has participated in national and international debates and seminars on Kashmir. He has led many protests to get justice for community. He met presidents, prime ministers, and parliamentarians members to apprise them on Kashmir situation. Mr. Utpal Kaul has published more than 100 books on Kashmir. Now he is regular on TV debates. Please welcome Mr. Utpal Kaul to present your perspective on this seminar.
Thank you very much, and sending warm greetings from India to our great Indonesian people who are so lovely, such a beautiful country. I am personally thankful on behalf of my community and on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir to Southeast Asian Studies Indonesia for organizing such webinar so that world and Indonesia and Southeast Asia countries will come to know what is reality in Jammu and Kashmir. I am so proud to be in the same panel, and I have been proud many times, where our most beloved and well-known Lieutenant General Said Atta Hussain Saab, I don't think he is the one person whose encyclopedia, living encyclopedia on Jammu and Kashmir. And same way, Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia ji, he's well known in Jammu and Kashmir, but he's well known in intellectuals, in Delhi circles, and he is a great army strategician. So, then we have Feramala Anjaya ji, very passionate about knowledge and about Jammu and Kashmir, about Himalayan studies, and about Southeast Asia and Indian subcontinent. And also thankful he is here, Dr. Anthony Abbas, and you, Dr. Abbas Walnia. So I will speak not as a scholar of Kashmir University, where I did my post-graduation, pre-doctoral, or my PhD, but I will speak as a son of the soil. I will speak as Bhumi Putra, which you, all people in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, you understand what is the meaning of Bhumi Putra. My family, ours are from generations in Kashmir, maybe 100, 200 generations. We are the aboriginal people from Kashmir. And Kashmir is such a God, it is a promising land. God has given it such a beauty, like Indonesia is beautiful country. Kashmir is such a beautiful place in whole of world. And people say only Kashmir. I can say earlier, it is Jammu, Kashmir, and it was Ladakh also. So people don't know Kashmir Valley is a very small place because Jammu is double than Kashmir and Ladakh is 4 times bigger than Kashmir. So, but this Kashmir Valley, world knows, so many hundreds and thousands of books have been written on Kashmir. So not going to the details of history, how accession was done, but we have to be thankful to Indian Army. They sacrificed a lot and we are proud, we Kashmiris are proud Indian citizens now. And we were the most lovable children of India because when in India subsidy system was introduced, some kind of concession, it was first time given in Kashmir. So when people in rest of India were buying rice for 2 rupees, in Jammu and Kashmir, we were getting 5 kilos of rice for 2 rupees. So for everything, we had some kind of subsidy, some kind of concession. We were getting rice, wheat, sugar. It was all subsidized. So cheap. So when I was going to Delhi or any other place, they were taunting me, oh, you get so cheap. You don't need to pay so much. But coming to prosperity, any country, any place has great prosperity then when the connectivity is fantastic, when the roads are good, when the airlines are good. So the first time in Jammu and Kashmir, the tunnel, it was, we call it, it was known as BC Road, Banhal Cart Road. It was a cart road because when our road was through Muzaffarabad from Baramulla, from that place to Rawalpindi. But then when Pakistan became and they took our this, that is what we call it, Pak occupied Kashmir. Now we have to go to Jammu. We had only small road, which was known as BC Road, Banhal Cart Road. And in 56, first time in India, 3-kilometer tunnel was made. So now I can declare proudly that we have more than 4 tunnels from going to Jammu to Kashmir, and now from Kashmir to Ladakh also. Once upon a time, it would take us 16 hours to go from Srinagar to Jammu, but it is now only 10 hours from Delhi to Srinagar. So the national highway roads have become so fantastic. If we come to education, there was no university in 46, 47 in Jammu and Kashmir. Now we have 9 universities. We have Jammu University, we have Kashmir University, we have Central University, we have Islamic Technical University. So we have so much towards education. We have nearly 5,000 schools. So much of money has been put so that everyone must be educated. Jammu and Kashmir is the only place in the whole of India where everyone has a house. I can say if somebody doesn't have a house, we have to find him out. Because everybody, maybe only one room or 15 rooms, but everybody has a place to live. And second most important, just to encourage everybody and just to make it sure, because in Jammu and Kashmir, we cannot have heavy industry. So we have, it is the only place in India where we have 5% government employees and pensioners. Nearly anything between 6 to 7 lakh government employees and pensioners. So what I mean to say that Government of India, we are thankful to Government of India. We are thankful to New Delhi that they have given us all kind of facilities. If I remember my college days, that when television was introduced in India, it was Delhi, Mumbai, and Kashmir. And in Srinagar Doordarshan, the television was introduced in way back in 1974 in Kashmir. And Kashmir was going to great progress. And we have 9 medical colleges. We have 9 medical colleges in Jammu and Kashmir. Once we had 56 B.Ed colleges for teaching the students, for teaching the teachers, for giving education in colleges and schools. And if you see the development in the border states, we are thankful to Indian Army, how they take care of health care in border districts, how the road connectivity is there. We call it GRIP. There is a border roads organization, how they keep always when there is a snow of 5 meters, 4 meters, 2 meters snow, and they clear the snow and the roads are very open to far-flung areas in Himalaya in Jammu and Kashmir. So what I mean to say that, let me tell you frankly, that India was not so rich country because Britishers have accused it. They looted nearly 100 trillion pounds from India. So India was almost poor. But in that poverty also, the government of India took very good care of Jammu and Kashmir. And I don't want to comment what was happening in the neighboring countries, but we have a joke. If you allow me, I will share that joke to you, that it was a joke that when in Muzaffarabad, in POK, they started some big industry, and that was a wood cutting industry, wood cutting machine. We call it in Kashmiri band-saaz machine, the cutting the wood. And General Ziaul Haq came to inaugurate that band-saaz machine. That was the compare between the two. And instead, HMT, Hindustan Machine Tools, the biggest watch manufacturing company, was built in Kashmir, nearly 50 years back. And now what happened? The other part of the story where the prosperity and Kashmir was booming in tourism. We have houseboats, we have luxurious hotels, and we were expecting now to go to the stage second. And we were expecting nearly 1.5 million tourists, nearly 500,000 foreign tourists from nearly 100 countries, and 1 million, 1.5 million people from rest of the India. But in 1989-90, everything changed. Our neighbors cannot sit quiet. They don't want to develop their own country. Instead, they started false narrative. And this false narrative is going on today also and everywhere. But the truth is that that is all false. What Pakistan, what we need from Pakistan, they could come and visit Gulmarg, Pahalgam, and they could visit. They are most welcome to stay in houseboat and go and enjoy Dal Lake. Come with the flowers, come as friends, come as brothers. We speak same language, we eat same food, we dress same way, but they choose to send us guns. And now today, if I tell you that the ammunition which they pushed in Kashmir from 1988-89 for last 32-33 years is equivalent to the what was used in the World War I. So it was kind of a war going on. 500,000 AK-47 rifles, AK-56 rifles, millions of bullets, and rocket launchers. And more deadly was they were motivating these youngsters, telling them false story that there is no mosque in Kashmir. And I tell you, in an average in whole of Asia, Kashmir has the largest number of mosques, and most religious Muslims in Kashmir, they go to Hajj, they enjoy their freedom, whatever they want, they do. And Kashmiris like me, nearly 1 million Kashmiris are doing job in rest of India and business also. If you go to any 5-star hotel in India, there will be a shop of a Kashmir. So India is Kashmir and Kashmir is India. So we are thankful the way money was put in Kashmir, all kind of facilities were given, but we lost in last 32 years. It is an amazing amount. We lost $25 billion. Jammu and Kashmir lost $25 billion because we lost 50 million tourists. In last 32 years, we were expecting nearly 50 million tourists, and it could be nearly 1-2 million foreigners. And when they come to Kashmir, they would enjoy in houseboats. No one comes for 2 days to Kashmir. Everybody wants to come and stay for 1 week and 10 days. And then they buy Kashmir carpets. Then they buy shawls. Kashmir has the famous shawls, what we call as Pashmina shawls and embroidered shawls. We have wood carving, we have paper mache, and all that business was lost. And I tell you one example. One German company, they wanted a huge investment in biotechnology. And when they surveyed different countries and different places in Indian subcontinent, they find only Kashmir is the only perfect place for having this biotechnology plant, the biotechnology unit, and they were ready to spend almost $500 million some 20 years back. But everything was okay. But at the end came because the place is not peaceful. It's a security risk. So no investor, no person will come with the money to invest at a place where it is not sure. Now, those who say that Kashmiris don't have human rights, I want to tell them that you send terrorists and they have killed my brothers, Jammu and Kashmir police. 2,500 policemen from Jammu and Kashmir. And it is the Jammu and Kashmir police which is fighting the terrorists. 2,500 young boys. And then our brave Indian army, the most disciplined army in the world. They are giving so much of freedom to them, but they cannot tolerate if somebody goes with the gun and shoots one of our soldiers or jawans, he will be given good reply to that. So what I want to tell you that Kashmiris want peace. Kashmiris want prosperity, and they are proud Indians. And for that, they sacrifice a lot. I was only referring here to police, how many policemen they killed. But I tell you, thousands of Kashmiris have been killed by these terrorists. And they call themselves jihadis. They are doing jihad. And jihad we have to do for poverty. Jihad we have to do for illiteracy. Jihad should be done for such things. You can't kill mother. You can't kill anybody's children. You can't go and kill families. And it will be so to know how much tragedies when they killed 2-year, 1-year, 4-year children. And I think thousands of Kashmiris lost their life. So what we need is peace, prosperity in Kashmir. And world must tell our neighboring country that have good relation, because they cannot won anything. They cannot gain anything by sending arms and sending these motivated young men to kill innocent people in Jammu and Kashmir and finish the agenda of peace and prosperity. And what I tell you, that Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir has so much of power and energy that it can be one of the world's most prosperous place. We have wonderful doctors from Kashmir, in Jammu and Kashmir, in America, in Saudi Arabia, in Malaysia, maybe in Indonesia also. And we can have those doing great work. They don't need to go anywhere. It could, in Kashmir, we can have the biggest hospitals. And even today, I tell you, even these situations also. In India, we have nearly 57,000 hospitals. And in Rajasthan, one province, Rajasthan, has 3,500 hospitals, and Jammu Kashmir is second in India. Although it's a small state in population, we have nearly 2,500 hospitals in Jammu Kashmir, and it was Ladakh also we did. And
just a reminder, 1 minute more, please.
Okay, so what I mean to say that it's I have not consulted books or anything to give my data, but what I have seen with my naked eyes. So I opened my heart to tell you that our country, they try to destroy Kashmiris, they try to finish Kashmir, but we Kashmiris will stand up, and we are proud Indians, and we are proud Kashmiris. And even in this situation, we want peace and prosperity. Thank you very much for giving me time to speak my heart and mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Utpal Kaul. His presentation, with your presentation, an excellent presentation with the passion. You explain the progress of the Kashmir and emphasize the Kashmiri is a proud part of India, that is and the challenge the future, how to maintain Kashmir to become the prosper region. And it is has a lot of foundation, from environments and from the geographically very interesting position in India. Let's hear now the next speaker. Please, I would like to introduce the second speaker is Mr. Said Atta Hasnain. He is a Lieutenant General retired and one of India's most decorated military officers. He received many medals, including the Param Visit Seva medals during his military career. He retired in 2013 as the military secretary after 40 years of service in the Indian Armed Forces. Recently, Mr. Said Atta Hasnain is working as the Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir. Prior to that, he had been specially inducted back to Srinagar to command the strategic 15th Corps to restore order when the 3 years agitation in street went out of order. In his long career, he has served in Sri Lanka with the Indian Peacekeeping Force in Punjab during the heyday of militancy, in India northeastern states, and in 7 tenures of duty in Jammu and Kashmir. He also commanded his unit in Siachen Glacier. He studied at the St. Stephen's College, New Delhi. He is an alumnus of Asia Pacific for Security Studies, Hawaii, and the Royal College of Defense Studies, London. He is also studied at King's College, University of London. Please welcome Mr. Said Atta Hasnain.
Thank you so much, Mr. Asap Satyawan. It's a pleasure and an honor to be connected with you all the second time now. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be speaking as a part of a very, very special panel. Mr. Utpal Kaul and I have spoken many times together on different panels here in India. General Vinod Bhatia is not only one of my closest friends, but he's also my batchmate, my course mate in the army, and we have served together 40 years, right? He used to be the Director General of Military Operations of the Indian Army. Very, very well known, very, very highly respected for his professionalism. May I first of all compliment Mr. Utpal Kaul for the excellent narrative which he gave out. And I will add to that. I will take it off from there. But I must first thank you all. I must thank your beautiful country first, Indonesia. Fortunate to have visited it 3 times. I was a member of the India-Indonesia Friendship Forum, which was set up by Mr. Manmohan Singh and your president together in 2011. And that led to these visits. I came to Jakarta, involved in a lot of parleys, where I simply loved it. I love the people. And that's why I'm very happy to be a part of this parleys and these talks with you all, which you all are putting across and giving us a platform to speak on. Because it's very important that we should not look at this narrative as an Indian narrative being put out only by us. It's actually being put out by you also. And Indonesia and India are such close friends that you understand where we come from, where our problems are. And that's why you putting this out in this manner makes a major difference. The narrative which is going out, the Indian narrative which is going out. Let me start by saying your subject is excellent, but we will twist the subject into different parts. I studied at the Royal College of Defense Studies in London, and I have an Indonesian colonel with me also. Wonderful friends we became. And I still remember that one thing which I came away with from London was the statement that every nation needs to follow. 3 things: stability, security, prosperity. Stability, security, prosperity. First, you need to be stable. If you are stable, you will be secure. If you are secure, you will be prosperous. Right? Now, we in India are making great efforts for our people. Our government is making great efforts to ensure we bounce back from the effects of the pandemic and things like that. But unfortunately, we do have problems from time to time which keep coming up. A very important document which I had pulled out in the morning today, and I can't seem to find it here. Here it is. Just a second. Now, related to stability and security, this morning's newspapers in India gave out a wonderful statement by the Chief of the Army Staff of India. And I'll just read out to you a little bit. He was speaking at a seminar, and there he said, while referring to the collusive threat that India faces from China and Pakistan, he said that disputed borders with nuclear powers, nuclear neighbors, coupled with state-sponsored proxy war, stretches our security apparatus and resources. He said that India's adversaries shall continue with their efforts to achieve their strategic aims. Of conflict by using the use of gray zone activities in the political, military, and economic domains, and do so in a collusive manner, which means that China and Pakistan both coming together to do all this against India. He also said that events in 2020 have been testimony to the diversity of security threats in all domains. And this has brought the spotlight towards non-contact and gray zone warfare. Through your medium of your great platform, I do want to tell our viewers that today's world, we don't look at conventional conflict. If you think the Russians are concentrating 120,000 troops around Ukraine and that they're going to enter and fight a conventional war, we got to think again. No, Russia is already fighting a gray zone war. Russia is already fighting a hybrid war, hybrid conflict inside Ukraine. Hybrid conflicts are the conflicts of the millennium, today's conflicts. Gray zone is today's conflicts. And I'll come to describing what this exactly is. The ceasefire, he said, the army chief said, the ceasefire on the line of control continues to hold. The line of control is between Jammu, Pakistan occupied Kashmir and the part of Kashmir which is still is with us. We have negotiated this ceasefire from a position of strength. And developments on our northern borders have also adequately underscored the requirement of ready and capable forces with an optimal component of boots on ground, backed by modern technology to preserve our sovereignty and integrity. What we are already witnessing, however, is trailers of future conflict. They are being enacted daily on the information battle. And this is what I want to impress on your viewers. That today's world is all about information. You see in social media, you see in the internet, you see networks, how they are created. And the intent of your adversaries is to try and sow seeds of dissent, dissent within the population, create divisiveness within the population, create such networks which can work without any contact with your armed forces. They can work against your nation. That's exactly what is happening. So all that the Utpal call said about our efforts going on in Jammu and Kashmir, and there are some great efforts. Let me tell you some of the figures of late. I've got all the figures with me which have just been put out by the government of India. I can tell you, for example, national highways. The amount of work which is going on in national highways, almost 3,127 crores have been already placed on it. Number of tunnels which are coming up, Mr. Kaul spoke about it recently. Railways, railway connectivity which is going on. One couldn't even think of railways in Jammu and Kashmir at some time. Huge transformational increase in the amount of power generation. Otherwise, Jammu and Kashmir has got a tremendous capacity for hydroelectric power. It's very much like countries in Central Asia like Tajikistan or Uzbekistan, but there's so much of water there. And hydroelectric power is clean energy. That's the kind of energy which can be created. Unfortunately, if you have people willing to come in and invest money, then this kind of a thing can be exploited. But when you have an environment which is not stable, which is not completely secure, no one wants to risk his money. Exactly what Mr. Kaul just said. Tourism. Now, the greatest thing, for example, France. Look at the number of people who come to France every year. 60 million people come to France. But come to Paris, in fact. Now, even in Jammu and Kashmir, if we can get 2 million people or 2.5 million people even in a year, it will make a huge difference to Jammu and Kashmir's economy. This year, in the last 2 years, we've been fortunate to bring in almost 3.8 million people into Jammu and Kashmir. But we can exponentially increase this. And that's how the people will have more money coming into their hands. You know, Mr. Satyavan, let me explain one thing. When I was a corps commander in Kashmir, I once asked the chief minister of Kashmir, I said, how much apple do you think must go out from Kashmir to give Kashmir, the Kashmiri apple growers, a lot of money, more money coming into the economy, etc. He said, well, if 2,000, 2,500 crores worth of apple goes out, and Kashmir's apples are world famous. He said, it would be a wonderful thing. And I said, why can't we work towards sending 3,500 crores out? If we send 1,000 crores more, that much more money will come into the hands of the people. So the chief minister asked me, he said, General, but you are a general of the Indian Army. How does this apple trade connect with you? So that is the million-dollar question. Why should an Indian Army general ask the chief minister of Kashmir how much apple should go out to Kashmir? The answer is very simple. If Kashmir is developing, if Kashmir is getting more money coming inside, if children are going to school, if the youth are going to medical colleges, as Mr. Kaul just said, if the railways is developing itself and people have got money in their pockets and they're buying new clothes for their children for festivals of Eid, and if they are eating good food, no one is going to get recruited to be a terrorist. Right? So prosperity automatically adds to your security. So I told the chief minister, I said, I want to add much more to it. I want to send out much more apple from Kashmir. And I will enable you to do it. I will create the environment for you to send out that much of apple. So this connect between security and stability and prosperity is so important. It all goes into a cycle, chasing each other at all times. Unfortunately, everything that we are trying to achieve today in Kashmir, with the kind of developments which are going on, medical colleges, educational institutions, women empowerment, hydroelectric power, etc. All this, we can double this achievement if Jammu and Kashmir is stable, if it is secure. Unfortunately, it is not. Unfortunately, it is not secure, it is not stable the way we would want it. And the reason for it is simple. We have neighbors who don't want it that way. We have neighbors who've got their eyes on this territory. It's a very, very rich, fertile territory. Geostrategically, very, very important. The Chinese want it because they want to build all their connectivity to the Indian Ocean through this area. They want to build their connectivity to Pakistan, to Afghanistan, to Central Asia, even also through this area. The Pakistanis want it because this is the cap, this is the crown of the Indian subcontinent. The most beautiful one, one of the richest areas in the subcontinent. So the Pakistanis say they want to bring in religion into it and say, the people of the Kashmir Valley are Muslim and therefore they should automatically be a part of Pakistan. I said, in India, there are more Muslims than there are in Pakistan. So how can you claim that on the basis of Kashmir having Muslims, that Kashmir should be a part of Pakistan? Kashmir, the king of Kashmir, the Maharaja of Kashmir, has signed on the dotted line, on the instrument of accession on the 26th of October 1947, to say that he was ceding this whole territory to the Union of India. But Pakistan doesn't accept it. It doesn't accept it. So that's why in 1989, after having lost the east portion, East Pakistan and Bangladesh, they started this attempt to try and get Jammu and Kashmir. One of the means, and people in Indonesia will understand it, people who are viewing us today will understand it. They tried to use the medium of religion and faith. They tried to say that there is a linkage between Pakistan and Kashmir because Kashmir is Islamic, or the Muslim population of Kashmir. They wanted to connect it with the larger Islamic community of the world and change the very, very secular, very, very middle path kind of ideology which exists among the Muslims of Kashmir. This is exactly the same ideology which exists in Indonesia. You see Indonesia, see the culture of Indonesia, see the culture of Bali, and see how well integrated is the Hindu culture and the Islamic culture in your country. This is a very similar kind of a thing which exists in India. We are a secular nation. just like you are. We are a secular nation, right? We respect all faiths. Pakistan does not. Pakistan does not respect that kind of faith. So they want to change the ideology of Kashmir, and by that alienate the people of Kashmir against the rest of India. And this is what they have been doing since 1989. They have been using proxies, terrorists acting as proxies on their behalf. They have been creating all kinds of networks in Jammu and Kashmir. We have defeated this to a great extent. To a great extent, we have already defeated it. We have brought down the strength of terrorists from as many as 5,000 to a strength of just about 200 today. But in this kind of a game, resurgence is always possible. For example, in the recent past, we have seen after Afghanistan, after what happened in Afghanistan in August, within 2 months, in the month of October, we found a sponsored activity taking place in Kashmir, where many of our minorities, Hindus and Sikhs, started getting targeted once again by radicals and terrorists. Now, this radical belief, which is got hold of many people within the faith of Islam, and I'm a Muslim myself, and I'm openly saying this. This works against our faith. Works against our faith. And one of the, I know I'm coming to the end of my time. One of the very important aspects that I want to take away from this seminar is this fact that Kashmir, the effort to try and radicalize Kashmir, one of the effects of this was exactly what Mr. Utpal Kaul spoke about. That is how to take out that 500,000 Kashmiri Hindus, the Kashmiri Pandits, away from Kashmir, so that Kashmir can become completely Muslim. That's not how nations work, right? This is exactly what they did on 19th of January 1990, and they followed it up subsequently, and they're continuing to do it even today, trying to make sure that the Indian concept of secularism does not remain embedded there in Kashmir. We have to counter this. We have to fight this. We can fight militarily. We can kill terrorists. We can stop arms and weapons coming in. We can stop improvised explosive devices coming in. We can do all these kind of things. But what is happening today is exactly what the army chief spoke about: information warfare. With the efforts to try and alienate the people in Kashmir by telling them that, see, you are Muslims, you have to be with us, not realizing that there are 200 million Muslims in India also. People like me who are there very much for the sake of the nation, for the nation. So at the end, let me say, one of the best models of counter-radicalization, de-radicalization, which I have studied, is the model which is followed actually in Southeast Asia. And it's a network set up by Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore coming together. And it's a question of identification of youth, preventing the youth from being hijacked by people who wish to change their minds and tell them that it's good only to have their faith and no other faith in existence in this part of the world. These networks have established what are called the internet imams. Very, very knowledgeable members of the clergy who are available to explain to the young people who are being misled towards radicalism, extremism, towards the use of violence. And through this system, your country, Malaysia, Singapore, all of them are working very, very effectively to reduce and stop this happening. This is something that we are now adopting, and we are also trying to do the same thing, not only in Kashmir, but many other parts of India. This is happening in southern India also, in central, north and central India also. And through this route, we hope that the Indian concept of secularism is promoted much more, which adds to the overall stability of Jammu and Kashmir. It adds to the security of Jammu and Kashmir, and thereby adds to the prosperity of the state, and thereby to the prosperity of our nation. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Please, 2 minutes more, Mr. Hasnain. Thank you.
I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations, I think very interesting from my point of view that you have touched the connection between stability, security, prosperity in Jammu and Kashmir, and also this is very important to have security improve in the area. And also you mentioned that the Jammu and Kashmir has a strategic value from the other countries because this is a very strategic location. And the end of your explanation about how the radicalization should continue to prevent the calamity, to prevent the very good bad situation, and then improve for the future. The next speaker will speaking from Jakarta. So Mr. Utpat Kaur and Mr. Hasnain speaking from New Delhi. Now let's hear Mr. Feramala, but I please introduce the short biography first. Mr. Feramala Anjaya is a senior journalist and writer from Indonesia. He is currently working as senior research fellow at the Jakarta-based Center for Southeast Asian Studies, CSEAS think tank. He has been working for Indonesia prestigious English daily, the Jakarta Post, for over 25 years as the foreign desk editor of the Post. Anjaya wrote numerous articles on international affairs, including South China Sea conflict. Mr. Anjaya articles have been featured in famous websites like Compasiana, Eurasia Review, and Morocco World News. He is also the author of several books during the last 3 decades. He has appeared as speaker in several international seminar, workshops, and webinars in countries like Indonesia, India, Vietnam, South Korea, Sweden, Malaysia, France, Belgium, Italy, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan. Anjaya was born in 1961 in India, where he obtained an MPhil degree from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and master degree in history from University of Madras, Chennai. After moving to Indonesia in 1991, he earned diploma in Indonesian language from University Indonesia, Depok, Indonesia. He speaks fluent Telugu, English, Hindi, and Bahasa Indonesia. Please welcome Mr. Anjaya, speaking from Jakarta.
Yeah, thank you, Pa Asep. Thank you, dear my distinguished fellow panelists and all the audience. A very good afternoon. Actually, starting from this year, the Center for Southeast Asian Studies started a new platform that's called Global Talk. I think this is the first event under this Global Talk series. So this is the first series. So we have to congratulate and we have to appreciate Dr. Arisman, the executive chairman of the CSEAS. Yeah. Okay. This year, actually, India is celebrating its 75th anniversary of its independence. Actually, it started last year, but technically it will turn 75 years in August this year. First slide, please, my PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, my topic is Jammu and Kashmir's troubled journey from 1947 to 2022. Next slide, please. Yeah, actually, when India became independent, it was maybe perhaps the poorest country in Asia. At the time, it had only less than $30 billion GDP and 340 million people. Next slide, please. And also only 12% of the population can read and write. So now we are now in 2022. Now actually India's GDP just now reached $3.05 trillion, which is a huge, I think it is the 6th biggest economy in the world. And its population now it is reached 1.4 billion. It is the second most populous nation in the world. And also its literacy rate is 74%. Despite all the problems. So India did this. Next slide, please. And not only that, I mean, if we see the global rankings, India also achieved a lot because it has a big military power in Asia. I think it is the second biggest military power. Then we have, it is also the sixth largest economy. Next slide, please. Yeah. Yeah. According to the latest for this year's budget, I think India is going to spend $70 billion on defense. Actually, it has 1.45 million active military personnel. It is, I think, the second biggest active military personnel in the world after China. Then also India is moving towards, in the next 2 to 3 years, Indian GDP will become $5 trillion. So maybe I think India will end up in 2 to 3 years, India will become the world's third largest GDP. Then India also by January, it has $634 billion forex reserves. These are all, I mean, India's achievements this year. So now we will move to the next slide, please. Yeah. Actually, the history of Jammu and Kashmir begins with India's independence, because before that it was an independent princely state. So actually the India's Independence Act of 1947 only dealt with British India, not princely states. At that time we had 565 states. So out of 565 states, they used to control at least 40% of Indian territory now, I mean, at that time. So Indian Independence Act of 1947 did not deal with any princely states, including Jammu and Kashmir. It was an independent state. So when India became independent, the British India was divided into two. One is India, which is secular, and one is Pakistan, which is a theocratic state. So at that time, actually, Pakistan deliberately want that this Jammu and Kashmir, with a majority of Muslims, I think at the time it was around 77%, because the Jammu and Kashmir state was a so huge state, because it had so many ethnic groups, religious people used to live in that state. For example, I mean, we had just Mr. Utpal Kaul mentioned that we have the, in terms of area, Ladakh was the biggest at the time, and it had people, I mean, like Tibetan Buddhists, and we had Jammu. I mean, Jammu mostly the Hindus, and we have Kashmir Valley, mostly the Muslims. Even among the Muslims also we had, I mean, like in Ladakh, most of the Muslims there were Shias, and like in we had Gilgit Baltistan, where also most of the people were Shias. So it is a pluralistic society at that time. But Pakistan wanted that this state should join. It lobbied, its leaders met with the Jammu and Kashmir ruler Raja Hari Singh, and at the time the people's leader Mr. Sheikh Abdullah, the president of the National Conference of Jammu and Kashmir. But both these, the king and the leader, they rejected. They didn't want to join Pakistan, because they correctly saw what would be the life if they joined Pakistan. So they didn't want, and at that time, but the impatient Pakistan, next slide please. The impatient Pakistan actually invaded Jammu and Kashmir, because they wanted that this neighboring Muslim state must join Pakistan. So they invaded and they committed a genocide there in Jammu and Kashmir. They killed many thousands of people, mostly from the minorities, Hindus, Sikhs, and others. Even they didn't spare Muslims. So then the National Conference and all these groups, they formed guerrilla forces to fight back against these tribals as well as Pakistan army. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, yeah. So actually, the Raja Hari Singh, when after this tribal invasion, asked for the India's help, but Indian government said we didn't help. We will not help you because you are not part of India. Then after 4 days of negotiations with all the people in Kashmir, the Raja Hari Singh decided to sign the instrument of accession on October 26, 1947. Then after that, only India airlifted its troops and liberated most of the Kashmir, except certain a small portion of the Jammu and Kashmir state. But at the time, what happened? It was Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, who went to the United Nations with the hope that Pakistan must withdraw its forces from Jammu and Kashmir. Later on, we will discuss about the future of this state. But the UN was able to achieve a truce from 1st January 1949. But at the time, the minority area of the Jammu and Kashmir was under the control of the Pakistan. So it remained until this day. So after so many years, actually the Pakistan has been spreading so many lies. I think tomorrow they will observe Kashmir Solidarity Day. Actually, it was initiated by in 1990 by an extremist leader called Qazi Hussain Ahmad from the Jamaati Islami Party, which has close links with the terror group Lashkar-e-Toiba. In 1991, Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif at the time called for a Kashmiri solidarity strike. Officially, in 2004, the Pakistan government started observing Kashmir Solidarity Day every year, and they declared it as a national holiday. Tomorrow in Pakistan, it will be a national holiday. Next slide, please. So now on this day, every year, Pakistan has been spreading so many lies. They say that the United Nations and India failed to implement or hold a plebiscite to decide the future of Jammu and Kashmir. But we have to see what happened exactly, because the United Nations Security Council passed 2 resolutions. One is resolution number 39 and the other one is 47. According to these 2 resolutions, especially the resolution number 47 stipulated that Pakistan must withdraw its military forces and its tribals from Jammu and Kashmir. If that happened, then India should also reduce its forces to the minimum level and then appoint a committee to hold the plebiscite. So that, withdrawal of troops from this area was a prerequisite for plebiscite. Since Pakistan refused to withdraw its troops, then India also didn't withdraw. Then after the UN saw these 2 countries which came to India came to the UN, and they saw these both countries are not willing to follow this resolution. So the UN also gave up the plebiscite promise. But after several years now, Pakistan says that UN failed to host it. But who was responsible? It was Pakistan, nobody else. That didn't fulfill the UN resolution. Next slide, please. Yeah, so then now Pakistan is constantly saying that people in Jammu and Kashmir has a right to self-determination, because in the 70s, UN General Assembly and UN Security Council, they had so many discussions, so many debates, and after that they said that this right to self-determination applicable to only a region which is a colony of another country, a colonial regime. Then India and its supporters openly said that Jammu and Kashmir is not a colony of India. It is voluntarily, it's a legal head, its people both joined together and joined India. So it is not a colony, what Pakistan says. Whereas if we see in the Pakistan occupied territory of Kashmir, where they bring in so many Pakistanis, Pashtun tribes, Punjabis, Sindhis, all they filled it. The originally Kashmiri people in that POK, many migrated, left, and they are marginalized. Now the majority, we didn't know really. I mean, majority of them might be non-Kashmir, not non-Kashmiris. Next slide, please. So the Pakistan's main strategy is to discredit India. Here, one media reported a statement from the Pakistan's legend Khalid Mahmood Arif, who is a senior military general. He said, to keep the issue alive, Kashmir must hit the headlines in the press and electronic media in the West. My suggestion is that we should project India as a usurper of human rights. India should be portrayed as an occupation force, a country which is holding Kashmiris against their will. We should portray India as hurting minorities. Kashmiris are suffering because they happen to be Muslims in a Hindu state. This statement has a full of lies. Like, for example, India is not a Hindu state. India is a secular state, as Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain rightly mentioned. Next slide, please. Then here also we see, sorry, we see a lot of frustration. After so many decades, Pakistan has been trying to get the sympathy or support from the international community. It failed. Recently, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan, just last week, he issued earlier this week, I think, he issued a statement. He said, what we find very difficult to swallow in Pakistan is that while they talk about Uyghurs, they do not talk much in the West about IOK, that is, I mean, they say it Indian occupied Kashmir, because the worst human rights violations are taking place there by India. But is it true? I mean, because they know what kind of human rights history Pakistan has. Because out of their 75 years of independence, 33 years were the Pakistan was ruled by military generals, military dictatorships. And still this day, so many human rights groups like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and so many reports of every day, the disappearances, the extrajudicial killings, arrests, torture in Pakistan is happening. It is the biggest violator of the human rights. That was the reason why if a military dominated country like Pakistan talks about human rights, nobody listens. So that is happening same. Next slide, please. So actually, Pakistan, as Mr. Utpal Kaul and Mr. Hasnain rightly said, Pakistan do not want Kashmiri people live in peace. Kashmiri people become prosperous. So that's why they tried so many wars, I think, in 1947, then in 1969, and in 1989, 3 wars. But after that, they realized, because given the military balance between India and Pakistan, they will never win a traditional or conventional war. They started a low intensity war, which is a proxy war. So they started sending terrorists to Jammu and Kashmir and to kill innocent people, to create a chaos. See, here is a table which shows the statistics. I mean, I didn't put all the 75-year statistics. Just we take, for example, in 2003, their Indian security forces were able to kill 1,494 terrorists. They are all, were fully funded and supplied arms and trained by the Pakistan. Then that number come down to 220. And in 2021, 182 terrorists. Last year, it was the very lowest number. Then they killed civilians, 795 civilians in 2003. And that number drastically dropped to 38 and in 2020. And last year, they were able to kill 41 innocent civilians. Of course, the security forces also paid a heavy price because they lost 314 people in 2003, and 2020 they lost 60 forces, and 2021 44. But actually, if you see 2020 and 2021, because why the violence was reduced, because the Indian government first time in the history in 2019 they abolished a special article in the Indian Constitution, that is Article 370 and 35A, to make Jammu and Kashmir on par with other Indians. So now there is no special provisions or special autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir. It is like any state like in India. Next slide, please. Yeah. If Pakistan stops violence, stops sending terrorists, stop sending radicals, then the Pakistan will certainly prosper, because they have a huge potential, very smart people, very hardworking people. They have natural resources. They have a huge potential in tourism, just my previous speakers mentioned. So actually, one may wonder why Pakistan is so desperate, which doesn't have any legal right, any claim, because Kashmir was never part of Pakistan. Why it is desperate? Actually, it was the lifeline for Pakistan's military. Because of this Kashmir issue, the military generals, which are minting money, so many of them became millionaires. Then they are borrowing money from foreign countries. They are spending on military, which is, Pakistan is a very poor country. The Pakistanis are paying a heavy price, and they control the government. Earlier, they were directly ruling, and now they are ruling indirectly. So if this Kashmir issue is not there, the Pakistan military will not have that power and money. So that is the main reason why they are keeping this Kashmir issue alive, because it is only rhetoric. They know that they want this issue should be remain forever. See now, then also if you see the Pakistan's history itself, they did a very big genocide in their own country. At the time, it was in East Pakistan. So they killed almost 3 million fellow Muslims and fellow citizens in that part, East Pakistan. Then the people of that region revolted against Pakistan, and it emerged as a new country called Bangladesh, which is doing much, much better than the present Pakistan. My question is, if really these Kashmiris youngsters or who want to, with the support of Pakistan, they want to separate, did they join Pakistan? If they join, what will happen? Are they ready to face that poverty and the unemployment? It is the country itself is on the verge of bankruptcy. So it is not an option. So now Bangladesh has proved that if they separated from the Pakistan, and they became more prosperous than Pakistan. So now India is emerging as one of the biggest economies in the world, and one of the biggest advanced country in technology, in education, etc. So the option is not at all a viable one. Now, actually, unfortunately, this Jammu and Kashmir state is now, we have the big portion is in India, and a small portion is in Azad Kashmir, that is in Pakistan, that's controlled by Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan. And in 1962 war, China occupied in this Jammu and Kashmir state's Aksai Chin area. And then also in 1963, I think Pakistan gave Shaksgam Valley as a gift to China. What right Pakistan has to give Jammu Kashmir's part Shaksgam Valley to China? So that's why, that was the reason the UN, OIC, and international community always they consider this Kashmir conflict is not an international issue; it is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and they want it must be solved through peaceful negotiation. So that is the only solution. But Pakistan also must realize, if they don't interfere in Jammu and Kashmir, and then the burden on spending more on military and support to the terrorism radical, they stop, the Pakistan will also develop. Actually, the Pakistan's future lies in this Jammu and Kashmir issue, because if they stop all these, then the foreign investors might come to Pakistan. Then they will also
remind the time
invest.
is already up, Mr.
Yeah, so
Ajay.
this is what I'm saying is Pakistan must stop its support to terrorism and radicalism in Jammu and Kashmir. Let them live in peace and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anjaya, which already you touch international dimension of the Jammu and Kashmir issue and challenge from neighbor countries. And now back to the New Delhi, we would like to follow presentation by Lieutenant General retired Vinod Bhatia. Please allow me to read your short biography. Mr. Vinod Bhatia is a former Director General of Military Operation, Indian Army. He writes on wide-ranging subjects such as regional and national security, international relations, special operation, human resource development, operational philosophy, and multi-domain warfare. Please welcome Mr. Bhatia.
Thank you, Dr. Satya. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on the platform of the Center for South Asian Studies, South Indonesia, and especially with a distinguished panel, my friend and philosopher, Janatas Nan, Mr. Kulkal, Dr. Anjaya, Dr. Anton Abbas. It's been, since morning I've heard three of the presentations, each one better than the other. But I must confess that, coming at the end of the three excellent speakers, most of what I wanted to say has been spoken to. So I'll try and either reiterate or reinforce what has been spoken to. And there's a, in the strategic community in Delhi, especially in the armed forces, there's a rule that if General Atta Aslan is speaking on Jammu and Kashmir, you don't speak anything after him. So that is something which a very difficult task for me today to speak after him. And of course, Mr. Paul is there; he's on ground. And I must say that Dr. Asif, you got an excellent background photograph. Reminds me of my days in Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much. Getting back to that, and it's a very apt topic today, very relevant, as we said, as Pakistan supports the Kashmir Solidarity Day tomorrow. Pakistan is, like said by the previous speaker, is a key issue where Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Jammu and Kashmir is a great state, great people. I have had the best of interaction with them. I have a lot of respect and regard for the people, love for the people. Something which let me quote a very often quote what Jahangir was a Mughal emperor in 1605 and who died by coming back from Srinagar, going to his capital in Delhi in 1627, a place called Naria. And what he had to say about Jammu and Kashmir was, Gar Firdos Ruhi, Zameen Ast, Hameen Asto, Hameen Asto, Hameen Ast. If there's ever a heaven on earth, it's here, it's here, it's here. And that is the heaven we are talking about. That's the people we're talking about. We're talking about 12.5 million people. And that's what comprises Kashmir. And these people have been troubled for the last, since let's say 1990, especially 1989 end. The start point of the terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, let me try and give my perspective to it. On 2nd of December 1989, Mr. Mufti Muhammad Sayyid, a very well-renowned politician of Jammu and Kashmir, was appointed as the Minister of Home Affairs in the central government. And on 8th of December 1989, his 22-year-old daughter, who was studying medicine to become a doctor, was kidnapped. And there was negotiations on, and they asked for the release of 4 terrorists. And 13th December at about 7 in the evening, she was exchanged for 4 terrorists. So I put a date to the terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir as 13th December 1989. It was very closely followed by 19th January 1999, and Mr. Paul knows that much better, having been there, which was where the Kashmiri Pandits who were there, massive, they were told to either leave, convert, or die. So it is engineered from across the line of control from Pakistan. So that is where the start point is. It's a philosophy of Pakistan, the proxy war, bleeding into 1,000 cuts. It's a low-cost, high-effect war. But as we talk about, having been through the concept paper, very nice. You talk about 70 years of Indian independence, and the concept note says, as one of the webinar objectives, discuss the remarkable achievements of India 75. Mr. Anjay has covered it, but let me just briefly touch upon it. India is the largest democracy. Nearly 800 million people voted for 542 candidates among 8,000 candidates, 540 seats. So that is the democracy which India has. It's the second largest population of 1.4 billion, with a youth bulge, an average age of 28.4 years. A demographic dividend, some may call it demographic disaster. It is the third largest economy. Let me differ with my co-panelists. The third largest economy in the world in PPP terms at $8.9 billion today. It is the 4th largest, and as your paper says, it's the 4th largest military power in the world. We've got the 2nd largest army, the 4th largest air, the 4th largest navy. It's one of the most combat-hardened, battle-hardened armed forces. We are the 6th richest in mineral resources, the 7th largest in land area, and we are one of the 8 nuclear-armed nations. India sees herself as a risen, responsible, resurgent nation, a regional power and a global leader, seeking a rightful place in the high table among the community of nations. Our national aim is to transform, and General Nastan covered this, to a modern, prosperous and secure nation. The focus on long-term peace, stability and development. The well-being of not only the 1.4 billion Indians, but a vision of a shared security and growth for all in the region. When we talk of Sagar, that's the Prime Minister talks about Sagar, it's a very noble idea, and we look at the stability and growth of all in the region. That also includes Pakistan. Peace and stability and security are imperative, and they drive economic development and growth. And that is one of the major drawbacks in Kashmir, as we have not had peace and stability for a long time, but we are moving towards it. There have been certain changes. We have seen peaceful periods, we've seen violent periods, but I think there has been relative peace now. We have also seen relative peace in the year 2012-13, and I must confess out here that I was a DGMO at that time, but that peace was not owed to me or to anyone else, but to a previous Corps Commander, General Abbas, who was the Corps Commander 2011, and he started something known as Ji Janab. I must say that, and that made an impact, a long-term impact, because the people want respect. And when we talk of human rights, and everyone talks of human rights, we should also talk of a game changer in Ji Janab. General Sir, correct me if I'm wrong, and that changed the thinking of the people towards the security forces, and that is where I think the change started. And in 2012 and 13, now the DGMO, we had a relatively peaceful period, and that is one of the reasons why we see that the 2003 November ceasefire, which was holding on for till about 2011-12, we saw a spike in ceasefire violations, 2013 especially, and that the two prime ministers that time, Mr. Nawaz Sharif and Mr. Manmohan Singh, then said, let the DGMOs meet and resolve that. And I was fortunate enough to go across towards and meet my counterpart on the other side on 24th of December 2013 and reiterate the ceasefire of 2005. So what I'm trying to say is that peace in Jammu and Kashmir is unacceptable to Pakistan, because Pakistan Army drives the policy, India policy especially, And the relevance of the Pakistani army, the domestic relevance, the financial relevance, and the political relevance of the army is based on an anti-India stance. So that is as far as I would say what happens out there, we have to address that. And that is where I say that the key challenge for India and the Indian armed forces especially is to change the behavior of the Pakistan towards India. And I'm not on the Pakistan people. When I say Pakistan, I think in particular the Pakistani army, which drives the India policy. Going back to what we have seen about the about the terrorism, and because Jammu and Kashmir growth is basically linked to peace and stability and terrorism. We've seen periods of high violence and we've seen periods of low violence. Fortunately, now, as was pointed out by the figures, we see relative peace in Jammu and Kashmir. And there are many things which have added on to that. But as long as relative peace is there, we also see that there is more scope for peace. We see the youth coming out in big ways to join the security forces, the police, the army, the government jobs. They want to join that. Basically, what we should looking at is education. We look at employment, and we should look at economic development in Jammu and Kashmir. And that will only come once we have peace and stability. I've got some figures also. I think the figures have already been given, but let me also give out certain figures of Jammu and Kashmir. Basically, these are important figures. These are indicators, actually, if you look at it. Okay. Now, no, I can't find it. It always happens. When you want something, you never get it. Oh no. Give me a second, please. Thank you. Okay, I think yeah. Okay. Going back to it is covered. Let me look at the education budget of Jammu and Kashmir. 1.8 billion USD. Compare it to POK and Gilgit-Baltistan, the Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It is 173 million USD. So that is the differential. When you talk about health, and it was covered earlier, the health budget is 618 million US dollars, whereas across the line of control in POJK, it is 62 million. We have about 2,500 hospitals compared to 73 in Pakistan occupied Kashmir and another 33 in Pakistan occupied Gilgit-Baltistan. The mortality rate in Jammu and Kashmir is 23, whereas on the other side of the line of control, 62. The doctor-to-patient ratio is 1:1658, and on the other side is 1:4916. That's the difference. The per capita income of the Kashmiris is $1,000, whereas in Gilgit-Baltistan it's 268 US dollars, and in Pakistan occupied Kashmir it is a little over $1,000. The unemployment rate is 5.3% Jammu and Kashmir, whereas in Pakistan occupied Kashmir 10.3%. There are 50 institutions of high quality like AIMS, IIT, IIM are now being opened in Jammu and Kashmir, and we have been in the cooperation of the Kashmir University, whereas on the other side there are 6 universities. If you look at what is really holding them back is there will be no tourism or very little tourism since 2019 onwards. 2019 August, the Article 370 was suspended, and thereafter 2020 we had the pandemic, and 2021 we had the pandemic continued. And Jammu and Kashmir economy is dependent on tourism to a big extent. And we are hoping that this would now go on. And to that extent, we had a 20,000 in this budget, 20,000 crore rupees now, and 39 MOUs which have been earmarked for development in Kashmir itself. We also getting the malls there, which the MR Group of Dubai is establishing 2 malls. So there is progress which is taking place, and the silent majority is reaping the benefit of the economic development which takes place. Like it was said earlier, we have a number of government employees. Almost each family in Kashmir has a government employee, which is there. Now, coming back to the situation in Jammu and Kashmir as of today, I think we are looking at peace, we're looking at prosperity, and we're looking at long-term economic development. Give a few years, things are changing. There has been some radicalization, not denying that fact. There has been radicalization. Wahhabism has come in a big way, but the silent majority has seen that, and the security forces are very categorical on the operations they conduct. These are collateral damages, not acceptable. Human rights violation, not acceptable at all. Zero tolerance towards human rights violation. Strict action has been taken. We had 104 cases of security forces personnel being punished, including 39 officers for human rights violations. So there's absolutely zero tolerance towards human rights violations, something which Pakistan keeps repeating. But if you go to Jammu and Kashmir, you go and talk to the people, you'll find different perspectives out there. Unfortunately, like all conflict zones, the people of Jammu and Kashmir also, the Kashmiris are multilingual. When they talk to the security forces, they will always talk of nation first. When the terrorists come to them, they will have to. They have another alternative, because terrorists don't follow rules. They'll have to say that yes, the terrorism is good. And when they talk to people who go from Delhi or from other international organizations and talk to them, and then they have to survive out there. So they have to speak a language which is for survival. So we'll have to be very careful in what we understand from them. We get conflicting reports. Everybody goes there and says, "I have on-ground experiences." Yes, they go there, they visit a few people, they get the feedback from there, they come back, and we propagate things which are not really out there. You have to live with them. You have to earn their respect. You have to earn their trust, and then you see what they have to say. And that is what comes out of experience of living. I've lived out there as a young officer, as a middle-rank officer, as a fairly old man also. And of course, General Hasnan has got one too many linkages there. I think no one knows Kashmir better than him. And I'm sure on this particular aspect, he will agree with me out there that the Kashmiris have been forced to speak many languages depending on the audience. So we should not take what they say. Now, coming to Pakistan and the information domain, which it does, if you look at the statements coming from the Pakistani Prime Minister, every day there's, he speaks more of India and Jammu and Kashmir than he speaks on Pakistan itself. So that is an indicator of their focus on how, because there is a zero-sum game. If India loses, Pakistan thinks Pakistan gains. No, but India is not looking at that. India is looking at security and growth of all in the region. We want a stable Pakistan, because a stable Pakistan makes sure well-being of Pakistanis, and a stable Pakistan also gives us the opportunities to develop our border regions, especially Jammu and Kashmir and other places. And we have to look after the well-being of 1.4 billion people. Things are not so good. If you look at Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has got a indirect connect. I'm not saying it's not, but it's got indirect connect. Look at Afghanistan. What has Pakistan done out there? Afghanistan wanted an Afghan-owned, an Afghan-led, and Afghan-controlled peace process. What have they got? They've got a US-owned, a Taliban-led, and a Pakistan-controlled violence. And if the violence in Pakistan itself, by their own figures, by the figures of one of the leading think tanks, is to believe, there's been a rise of 68% in violence levels in Pakistan since May of 2021. And if the violence levels increases in Pakistan, it impacts India, it impacts Jammu and Kashmir. Right? So we'll have to see how to now, with the expanded space for terrorism, especially with Afghanistan, the AFPAC region now, there's expanded space out there. The terrorism has been emboldened. Terrorism they think that if they can defeat the United States of America, and they believe that firmly that they defeated the United States of America, and no one else other than the former ISI chief, General Hamid Gul, said so on television. He said, with the help of the US, we defeated the Soviet Union, and with the help of the Taliban, we defeated the US. What he did not say was, with the help of the Pakistan, we'll defeat Pakistan, because when terrorism spreads, it doesn't see boundaries, it doesn't see anything. And that is exactly what we're seeing now on the western side of Pakistan. Things are happening. Yesterday, day before, we got reports coming in on the Baluch attacks on two of the Pakistan posts. So it is not a good sign for the region. It's not only a good sign for India. India can, when we were, when we, in 1947, we became independent. There were a lot of people in the world who believed that India with 550 states will disintegrate in no time. Right? That was a common belief, right? There is a common talk that how can 550 states come together, different languages, different sort of a different society, different dialects. But then, like Indonesia, India stood together. Indonesia has 1,300 ethnic groups as one, as Indonesians. That is good for India also, like Indians. Right. So we have defied all that, and India stood as one under all difficult circumstances. We've been through very difficult circumstances. We were short of almost everything in the 60s. We had the Green Revolution. In the 90s, we had to go and economically we were down. The economic reforms started coming in, and that is how we overcame the 2008 the economic crisis of 2008. So today we are looking at a reasonably.
Remind the time 1 minute more, please, Mr.
Right. So I think I'll conclude out here. I'll say I will say the Jammu and Kashmir, we'll have to look at both the factors, internal factors and external factors. Internal factors while we address, it's the external factors of Pakistan, and especially now with China's interest in the CPEC and how we try and change Pakistan's behavior. The steps have started off with the Uri strikes, with the strikes in Balakot, and with the weakening Pakistan. But we wish Jammu and Kashmir peace and prosperity and progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vinod Bhatia, which make it a discussion comprehensive in internal and external and international and domestic aspect of developing Jammu and Kashmir. Let's continue to the last speaker from Jakarta. Please, I would like to introduce. He is Anton Ali Abbas. He is head of Center for Intermestic and Diplomatic Engagement, Paramadina Graduate School of Diplomacy, Paramadina University, Jakarta. He is managing editor of International Social Science Journal. He earned his PhD in Defense and Security from Cranfield University, UK, and his current main research interests are Indonesian defense policy, officer career management within the Indonesian military, and fisheries diplomacy. He has skill in political science, international relations, defense, lecturing, personal branding, and journalism. Mr. Ali Abbas also has a strong education professional focus in defense and security. Please, time it is yours, Mr. Anton Ali Abbas.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Asep. Good afternoon from Jakarta. Thank you for Center for Southeast Asian Studies that has organized this event. Again, it's been an honor for me to participate in this prestigious event. I think this is my second time being one of the speakers in your event. As previous speakers have covered many issues, I think in the next 15 minutes, I only want to focus my presentation in highlighting a security issue, which is essential in making Jammu and Kashmir more prosperous in the future. Talking about Jammu and Kashmir, the state has been unsettled since 1947, and its territory is divided by a military line of control, with Pakistan controlling 1/3, disputing India's claim over most of the remainder as Jammu and Kashmir. And also China claimed some of the region's land. Actually, if I refer to the data, Jammu and Kashmir actually was far from the poorest ranking. For instance, during 2014-2015, Jammu and Kashmir per capita income was about 63,000 rupees, higher than seven other Indian states. During 2017-2018, economic expansion of Kashmir was around 6.8%, greater than 8 states, and only a lag from national expansion, which is 7.2%. If we discuss regarding the literacy rate, for Jammu and Kashmir, again, it's quite high, nearly 69%, ranking it higher than 5 Indian states. For me, that's a good indicators when we portray the area. However, although the United Nations considered Jammu and Kashmir to be dispute territory, on 5th of August 2019, as you know, the Indian government made major changes to legal status of its Muslim majority Jammu and Kashmir state, specifically by repealing Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, which provided the special autonomous status. Of course, the unilateral action sparked polemics. Some analysts perceive that the policy might harm regional instability and incite further escalation between India and Pakistan. Meanwhile, the rising of local militancy in Kashmir might also undermine ongoing Afghanistan peace negotiation, which is the Pakistani government facilitating. India's scholar tradition also maybe might suffer as the government appears to pursue Hindu majoritarian policy at some cost to the country religious minorities. What's the impact then regarding the revocation of the article? Following the revocation article, the government claimed, as previous speaker also mentioned, number of terrorist-related incidents was dropped. During the period of 841 days after the abrogation, the terrorist incident declined up to 41%. At the same time, number of civil casualties was still quite high. According to Minister of State for Home Affairs, Mr. Nityanand Rai, after the repeal of article until 26 January this year, at least 98 civilian and also 109 security forces personnel have been killed in the area. Yes, when we talk about the security for Kashmir, there are major terrorist groups that have been active, including Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jais Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, ISIS, and so on. And the Indian government also have made significant efforts to detect, disrupt, and degrade the terrorist operation within the country. However, beside the foreign terrorist groups, currently, for me at least, there are another two emerging security challenges when we talk about the current situation in Jammu and Kashmir. The first is the emerging of hybrid terrorism, or sometimes we call it part-time terrorism. The word hybrid first emerged after the local Kashmiri believed to be affiliated with the Resistance Front, an affiliate of Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba. In other words, the hybrid terrorists mostly is about the local militants or home ground terrorism, we may call it, that include the Kashmiri youth who are recruited by various militant groups active in Jammu and Kashmir. According to the data, again, the recruitment of local militants actually spiked since 2012 and continue to increase in the following years. In this regard, of course, the development of information technology has affect to that phenomenon. The internet has played an important role in the rise of the new militant movement. In particular, social media has proven to be the most effective weapon of the hybrid terrorism. They have flooded social media with the hundreds of contents and circulated through platforms such as Telegram and WhatsApp. The new militant also use this content to spread the call of jihad and inspire the youth to join the ranks. The second emerging challenges that I identify when we discuss regarding Jammu and Kashmir is possibility of narco-terrorism. The rising of narcotic trades is, for me, is another imminent threat in Jammu and Kashmir, which has been seen over 3 decades of cross-border terror. Following the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, there is now concern that there could be a surge in drugs smuggling. For instance, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has seen large narcotic seizures in recent years, particularly heroin. Indeed, up to now, there is no hard evidence found in the court to prove the link between the drug trade and the terrorist group. However, the ongoing investigation, which are conducted by Kashmir Police and National Investigation Agency, indicate that the money generated from heroin smuggling is being utilized to violent terrorist activities. Nevertheless, for me, one of the remaining problem in Jammu and Kashmir, when we talk about the how we create more prosperity in the area, is trust deficit between the Kashmiri Muslim and the central government. According to the professor Amalindu Misra of Lancaster University, United Kingdom, there are 2 challenges for the ruling government regarding the Kashmir issue. First is its rule is highly unpopular. The central political leadership making decision on Kashmir is not trusted by the Muslim majority population. The second is the grassroots dissident that has metamorphosed into hybrid terrorism has also become a useful proxy for foreign terrorist group. And the revocation of Kashmir special political status and policies in dealing with dissident have created unbridgeable gap between the ruler and the rule. Of course, such a solution to the security challenges would require a mixed approach between soft and hard measures, perhaps in investing narco-terrorism, the old counter-insurgency measures may be success. Even when government applies the approach to overcome the hybrid terrorism, it may also success in some extent, including capturing the leader or terrorist perpetrators. However, the solely approach may not tackle effectively the ideology or the underlying causes of hyperterrorism. So, for me, to conclude my presentation, I think the Indian government needs also to enhance a non-traditional approach in responding the growing of local militancy. A more non-violent responses to this violence I require, although it seems quite unlikely to find any intersectoral, regional, and international cooperation as a solution to the security problem in Jammu and Kashmir in the near future. Thank you, moderator.
From Ali Abbas, thank you very much for your perspective, particularly international dimension, which will influence the developing of Jammu Kashmir regarding the changing ruler of Afghanistan related to narco-terrorism. Now we do have 20 minutes for discussion on the distinguished speaker. First is about the we have received the question. The question is why the UN, the West, and OIC organization, Islamic Organization on Cooperation, not take Pakistan arguments about Kashmir seriously. So I just repeat the question: why the West takes Pakistan argument about Kashmir seriously? I would like to request Mr. Utbal Kaul to have a perspective on this question first, please.
Excuse me, can you please repeat one more time the question? Hello?
Yes, why the United Nations, the West, and OIC did not take Pakistan arguments about Kashmir seriously?
First of all, from the very beginning, there is a false narrative going on. And Pakistan has no locus standi on Kashmir. If we see Act of 1946, Indian Independent Act, only the Maharaja or the king could sign the accession. He was the only authority, not the people. It was the king. And King of Jammu and Kashmir decided to go with India. And also, I repeat here, the people of Jammu and Kashmir also decided to go with India, because at that time, Sheikh Mahmud Abdullah, the leader of National Conference, and the Dogra leaders, they also, Gujar leaders, Bakarwals, Ladakhis, everybody was with the accession of India. So it was on one side, Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, Hari Singh, and on the other side, whole of Jammu and Kashmir, people of Jammu and Kashmir got with India happily. But when Pakistan attacked, Nehru thought United Nations is a very honest organization. They will listen when we go and tell them that we have been attacked. Pakistan was an aggressor. And so they had some resolution, and that resolution has lost their relevance. Now, after 9th of August 5th of August 1919, Jammu and Kashmir, there is no Article 370, there is no 35A, and we as Indians and as the conscious people of world must come and take the narrative, which is right one, which is right one. We have human rights violation. I am a victim of terrorism of Kashmir. My house was burnt. My library of 5,000 books was burnt. My business establishment of our family was burnt. And where is the human rights organizations of West? Where is the Amnesty International? They must take our cause that 50,000 houses of Kashmiri Pandits were burnt. Nearly 500 temples were burnt. And where is the Western media? Where is the journalism in West, in US and other places giving the stories what happened with this community and how Pakistan is sending terrorists with arms? Now it is the conscious people of world, journalists and academicians like you who will take this matter forward, because we are on the path of truth. India is on the path of truth. It is democratic, it is secular, it is a free country towards progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Utpal Kaul. Maybe Mr. Atta Hasnain, would you like to add some perspective on this question?
Definitely. Thank you. And Mr. Utpal Kaul has given a very good narrative to this. Let me admit that. But let me say again, wherever this question has come from, no pointers. But obviously that the person is perceiving that Pakistan's narrative should be believed by the UN, should be believed by the West, and should be believed by the Organization of the Islamic Countries. Right? Now, let me explain this. Why the Pakistani narrative cannot be believed and should not be believed. Firstly, Pakistan is making ardent efforts all over the world. It is sending its ambassadors everywhere. It is sending veteran diplomats. It is sending senior military officers to every capital of the world to speak at various think tanks, etc., to try and cultivate its narrative. Its narrative is simply that Jammu and Kashmir is a part of Pakistan and that there should be a plebiscite there. Plebiscite essentially means that the choice of the people should be taken. No one understands here internationally, Pakistan never states this, that the UN resolution very clearly stated that if you have to resolve Kashmir, let's first ensure that the state which has committed aggression must withdraw its forces. The state which has committed aggression in this case is obviously Pakistan, because, as Mr. Kaul just now said, the king of the Maharaja of Kashmir signed the instrument of accession. He was the only authority for it. And therefore, Kashmir belonged to India. The aggression was by Pakistan. They must vacate that aggression. But India can then reduce its forces in Kashmir, and then there could be a plebiscite or a going to the people for their opinion. This was 1948-49 when this resolution was passed. Since then, history has overtaken everything. No one talks of the Shimla Agreement. 1972 Shimla Agreement, on which Pakistan has signed on the dotted line with India, to say that we will treat this problem as a bilateral problem and no longer will there be intervention by a third party. The United Nations is a third party. They cannot be a party to this issue any longer, because Pakistan tried to change the narrative in 1947-48 by force, in 1965 by force, in 1971 by force, and subsequently after the Shimla Agreement, they tried to change it by force after 89 through the attempts to carry Holocaust of the Kashmiri Pandits in 1990, and in 1999 by attacking us in Kargil. Now, this Pakistan never speaks about. What happened in all these milestones? And obviously, therefore, Pakistan's credibility in the international community is extremely poor. India has a high credibility. It's a member of various respected organizations of the world. It's a member of the G21, for example. It's going to be shortly, as earlier brought up by Anjaya Saab, that we will be the third largest economy of the world at about $5 trillion. Obviously, Pakistan is considered a rogue state. And many times that attempt has been made to also brand it a rogue state, because they are the ones who are using infiltration, using terrorists as part of state sponsorship. And I always like to remind an audience, Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State's very famous statement, that nations who have snakes in their backyard should not expect that those snakes will only bite the other side. It will also bite them. You have seen what's happened to Pakistan internally. For the last many years, they have been in the throes of their own internal security issues. And yesterday itself, they had a problem in Balochistan yesterday. And obviously, they will say that this attack has also been sponsored by India. India is a responsible country. We do not fight our wars by going through proxies to other nations. We fight on our borders when people attack us. We don't attack others. Thank you.
Can I add a comment, please?
Yes, please, Mr. Pinod Bhatia, continue, please.
Yeah. The Shimla Agreement is categorical. Section 2 states that all issues with India and Pakistan for normalcy relations will be bilateral. Right? And the UN Charter, and a quote, the UN Charter says, according to the UN Charter, if two contesting states conclude a bilateral agreement by virtue to move towards peace and normalcy are restored, role of UN comes to an end. So that is as per the UN Charter. Right. So legally, there's nothing which the UN can really say after the Shimla Agreement, because the Shimla Agreement, Section 2 is categorical, that will be bilateral. And the UN Charter says that if two states, contesting states, have agreed to a bilateral arrangement, then the UN comes to the intervention UN comes to an end. So that's the legal position also.
So thank you very much. I think comment on the Shimla Agreement is I read in the YouTube streaming, there is question, there is some question from Ramesh Rajan, Ramesh Kumar, Sewa Bharti, India. I think it is about why the Shimla Agreement, why the Pakistan show no respect for such treaties, and what about the world bodies. Maybe Mr. Feramala Anjaya, would you like to add some explanation about the what's about the Shimla Agreement as mentioned with Mr. Atta Hasnain and Pinod Bhatia?
Yeah, thank you, Pa Asep. We have to see one simple thing. Before October, in between from August to October in 1947, both Pakistan and India did not have any legal right in Jammu and Kashmir. Both did not have any legal right. And we must also remember, India never went to Kashmir on its own. Then the second, it was the Pakistan which sent its troops in civilian clothes and tribals to attack Jammu and Kashmir, occupied and committed genocide there. So that was a basic thing. So then after the Pakistan's aggression, only the Kashmir ruler went to India and joined India. Then only India responded to the Pakistan aggression. So it is very clear who is the occupational force. Then at the same time, the second point I want to make is the United Nations. Now today Pakistan is talking about plebiscite, UN resolutions. But remember, who went to the United Nations? If India was the occupying force, why did India went to United Nations? See, it was not Pakistan. India went to United Nations to stop Pakistan aggression. So that is the second point. The third point coming about the Shimla. What happened in Shimla was, it was after a 1971 war in which Pakistan not only lost its a huge chunk of land and population, and Bangladesh emerged as an independent country. And then there were hundreds of thousands of, around 100,000 of Pakistan troops were prisoners of war. And then the Pakistan came to this Shimla agreement with India. Then as a part of that agreement, India released all the prisoners of war. And then both countries agreed that this Kashmir issue was, should not be treated as an international issue, only a bilateral issue. That is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Pak Anjaya, for your additional comment. But because of the time, we would like now to request for the closing statement for all of the participants, for all distinguished speakers. I would like to request Mr. Atta Hasnain for the closing statement, please.
Thank you. I think this was a wonderful panel, a wonderful seminar, a very good idea, particularly because of the fact that tomorrow is 5th of February. I'm glad that in Indonesia, a think tank can think of such a thing. There are not many think tanks in India who are thinking of this. Let me tell you this. They are not aware that 5th February is Solidarity Day, which is celebrated in Pakistan. And that they, on Solidarity Day, they are the ones who try and send out messages of influence and information to people in Kashmir, that Kashmiris should look for Azadi or Kashmiris should look for integrating with Pakistan. This is the day 5th. And therefore, it's a very, very important thing that you selected 4th today, the eve of a Solidarity Day, to send out this message. And each of our speakers had conveyed it almost the same narrative, but looking at different domains from their own experience, from their own research. And I think it's emerged very clearly that this strategically, this is such an important area. It has emerged such an important area that we are not likely to see peace and stability of the kind that we desire to come into this area in the very near future, because we have the collusive efforts of both Pakistan and China, who are both looking at this territory, who would like to have this territory for their own purposes, and would do everything to ensure that India's control over this area, the integration of this territory with the rest of India, is weakened as much as possible. But I can assure you, India is equal to it. We have a large set of armed forces. We have a broader understanding today of the combination of diplomacy, the combination of armed power, the importance of technology, the necessity of economic development. All this we are looking at comprehensively. No longer are we looking at this as purely in security terms. We are primarily looking at it in comprehensive terms, because no longer is it important. In fact, it is non-contact aspects of warfare today which are far more important than the contact part. And this is going to be very evident, I think, in Europe also in the very near future as we continue to progress on the Ukraine front. So with that, I will stop here and wish all my panelists and the anchor and everyone who's here today the very best for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lieutenant General retired Atta Hasnain. Please, Mr. Utpaul, for closing statement.
I will join General Atta Hasnain that it was a great webinar, and very experienced people who know a whole of India, and they know part of Kashmir, and they have worked there. And so it was, and then the scholars in Indonesia, they came with the right narrative, which people in Indonesia, in Southeast Asian countries and world, they must know it. And my last statement will be for government and people of Pakistan, that you will never have dream of visiting Gulmarg, Pahalgam, or Mughal Gardens, or Dal Lake. You can do it, leave arms, and come as friends, and come to Kashmir, visit Kashmir, enjoy Kashmir, but not as a terrorist, but come as a friend. You will flourish because your economy is going down the lane. Only India can save you, but you have to be like a brother and leave these arms and leave this military junta which is ruling your country and which is destroying your country. And I wish best of luck to all of you, all the panelists, And I am personally thankful to you and thankful on behalf of Kashmiris, on behalf of my community, that you are taking our plight, you are taking our cause for the world consciousness. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Utpal Kaul. It's time for Lieutenant General Retired Vinod Bhatia for closing statement, please.
It's been a very educative 2 hours, 2.5 hours rather. And thank you very much, Center for South Asia Studies. Thank you, Dr. Asif. Thank you, co-panelists, Janata Asnan, Mr. Utpal Kaul, Dr. Anjaya, Dr. Abbas. It's been a real education, and we look forward. We should not never give up hope. We look forward to peace and prosperity in Jammu and Kashmir. We have as India, we have done reasonably well, handled Pakistan reasonably well, and the fact proves that the violence levels are down for the last 2.5 years, 3 years. And we have to look after our people of Kashmir. We have to support them because they are fighting the battle on behalf of India. It is they who are suffering, and we have to move as one. And thank you for organizing this on a very, on a day when Pakistan is likely to up the ante tomorrow in the information domain, at least 5th of February, Kashmir Solidarity Day. And thank you for supporting the people of Kashmir. Thank you so much indeed. Wishing you all the very best. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod Bhatia. And now is Mr. Anjaya to have some word for our conclusion in our Global Tech today.
Yeah, thank you, Asep. Thank you. First of all, I want to express my sincere thanks to all the panelists. Thank you very much for your valuable time for this global talk. So in my opinion, actually, we have so many similarities between Jammu and Kashmir and Indonesia, because in Indonesia, we used to have Hindu kingdoms in the beginning, in the first, then later on we have Buddhist kingdoms, later on we have Islam came and we have Islam kingdoms. But in Jammu and Kashmir also it is the same, where first it began with the Hindus and then Buddhists came and then Islam came, but all they coexisted peacefully. That was the common thing between the two countries. So now the biggest threat is the radicalism, number one. Number two is terrorism. Actually, in Indonesia also we are facing this problem, radicalism and terrorism. But unfortunately, in Jammu and Kashmir, the radicalism and terrorism is coming from a state, neighboring country, Pakistan. Pakistan has a notorious history of supporting terrorism, because during the 1990s, they called all the world terrorists to gather in Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union. And then they supported openly the Taliban. And now they have only so many terror groups. So now Pakistan itself became a victim of terrorism. So it is very dangerous. We have to fight together, both Indonesia and India, fight against this radicalism and terrorism. We should not allow any country, any government support terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Anjaya, for the closing statement. I would like to invite Pak Anton Ali Abbas for a concluding remark, please.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Asep. I think the phenomenon regarding the Jammu and Kashmir is quite common, faced by neighboring countries which have territorial dispute issues. But I just want to touch with the previous question regarding for me, why the Pakistan narrative still get attention in international forum or international area. For me, it indicates such a political dynamics in multilateral forum when one of member country, in particular Pakistan, has support from other major countries. such as China and also Iran, for instance. So in this regard, for me, Indian government again should be apply a more proactive approach, perhaps maybe aggressive approach in multilateral and bilateral forum regarding the Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you, Dr. Asep.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Anton Ali Abbas. Please open the video for the photo session. And Ms. Jihan, please have a photo session for us today. Thank you, Mr. Atas 9, for coming for the session. Please, Ms. Jihan, to have a picture together.
Okay, Mr. Asep. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, all speaker and moderator.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. This is the end of the Global Talk today. 5 years of India's independence, journey of Jammu and Kashmir toward prosperity. On behalf of the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, Indonesia, I'm as moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Asep Setiawan, Research Fellow of CSEAS and academic staff of Graduate School of Political Science, University of Muhammadiyah, Jakarta. Would like to thank you to all distinguished speakers, Mr. Utpal Kaul, Mr. Said Atta Hasnain, Mr. Vera Malanjaya, Mr. Vinod Bhatia, Mr. Anton Ali Abbas for participation in this Global Text program. And I am surprisingly and respectfully you patiently following the program until the end. And we would continue such productive discussion in other program. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you and good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, bye bye. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.